Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 3, harmonizing light and shadow to embody your mystical power and purpose. I'm your host, Washayla Sananda, and today I have two very special guests that I'm really looking forward to sharing with everyone. And we have Megan Camille and Michelle Lee. Welcome, Megan and Michelle.
Thank you, Washayla. We're so happy to be here.
Yes, we are.
I'm so happy to have you. So before we dig in, I am just going to read a little bit from your bio so people kind of have an understanding of who you are and what your background is. Michelle Lee and Megan Camille, a dynamic and intuitive mother-daughter team, unite to combine their wisdom, experience, and intuitive gifts to form the Sophia Mystery School for extraordinary people. Michelle is an author, speaker, and coach for more than 24 years and has been helping women transform their lives by embodying their true self-worth, skyrocketing their self-confidence, and busting through their financial glass ceiling. Megan has been psychic her entire life. She is a clear channel for Source to deliver specific details, messages, and opportunities for timeline shifting. Megan has honored her connection to Source by building 3 successful businesses with the knowing that there is both an energetic and strategic side to business. In addition to entrepreneurship, Megan is a proud mother of 2 beautiful children, Samson and Salem. And I love those names. So that is just a little bit, and there's so much more. And so because this is the first time I've interviewed you both, I would love to start out with a little bit of your origin story. Specifically, how did you come to have the spiritual knowledge and understanding that you have today? And either one could start, because I want to hear from both of you on this.
It's kind of trickled down, so you start.
Well, as a child, I saw spirits, but I shut it down really. I did shut it down really early. It wasn't until later Megan reactivated them for me because she was so psychic and so intuitive. And I guess when I was 16, we really started searching. When my grandfather died, my mother started looking at life after death. So in my teens, we were looking into it. And then Megan came through and she was just like this wide open channel. And we live in Arizona now, but years ago we came to Arizona and took a training in intuitive development together. We're 14 or 15?
14, yeah.
She was 14 years old, and we were taking the same training. And I realized I'm claircognizant and figured out how I receive information, and Megan just skyrocketed. She was just so wide open. So that's how we started.
Yeah. My intuition was really cultivated through just the support of my mom and my grandma, who saw it for what it was, and not for some craziness. And because of that, I had the freedom to really flourish and expand. And now it just is the way that I live. I'm always tapped in and tuned in and communicating with Source, other galactic beings, and it just is a way of life now. And so we decided to bring the way that we live with that kind of spirituality into the Sophia Mystery School, so that we could offer that to other people if they choose to live that way as well.
Wow, I love that. And I love how, Megan, you had that support your whole life from the beginning, where you didn't have to shut down your abilities because, you weren't being told that it was wrong or crazy or, whatever most children get shut down by, because their parents are afraid of their gifts. So great job, Michelle, on nurturing her abilities to stay open. And I feel like that must just exponentially improve your connection when you can be open like that from the beginning and have that family support. And so going forward, I love that the two of you are working together now in your mystery school. But because the theme of this show is about harmonizing light and shadow, what are some of the shadow things that have come up? And I know every life has shadow issues that help us evolve, but what are some of the things that have come up for you as shadow work that you've been able to harmonize and integrate in your life, and that has made it possible for you to step into this more evolved mystical side of yourself?
Yeah, interesting question. I feel like we just talked about this morning.
I know, we did.
Yeah. And again, like we weren't exactly sure what the tagline was. So the fact it's totally in alignment. And what I've really come to know is that we live in polarity. We live in a dual experience here on earth. So there is light and there is shadow, and there's so much struggle to try to heal or get rid of or clear the shadow, as opposed to really embracing it as necessary and important and special, just like the light side is. And there's a certain level of victimization that comes with people discovering their shadow side, that it's somehow out of their control, or it's just something that they need to heal from, as opposed to being in their full responsibility of, we live in a space where free will is what rules. So even our shadow side is always choosing what that experience is going to be. And a really great example for myself with that was, I was sex trafficked in my late teens, early 20s. And I spent a lot of time really identifying as the victim of that. And the deeper I get into the spirituality, into the knowing of consciousness, it was truly a choice of free will. And there is that in everything that's happening right now on the planet, right? You are either choosing to witness what's happening with an open heart of love, or you are choosing to be separate of it and saying that is that over there. One allows for integration of the shadow, and when we're integrating the shadow, we're evolutionizing at a soul level. The other one of seeing us as separate is holding us extremely still in time, right? There isn't a lot of soul evolution taking place when we're like, well, that out there is happening out there, and it's separate from me. And that's with any shadow work, right? That was with me being sex trafficked. Even in the way that I say that, me choosing sex trafficking is what is going to integrate the shadow and the light side. Does that make sense? Does that
Makes sense to me.
okay?
Yeah, wow. I just want to comment on that for a minute. And I know this, I already know your story, so it's not the first time I've heard it, but I'm sure for people that hear that the first time, it's like, what? And it's such a big topic right now. What would you say to people who say, what do you mean you chose it? You were victimized. You were, certainly nobody that ends up in sex trafficking has chosen that life for themselves. I can feel how people could be triggered by just the idea alone as a concept of, anytime we think of people, especially young people, young woman, young anybody, being sex trafficked, you think victim, immediately. So how did you remedy that? How did you come to terms with actually being able to say, I chose that in my life experience? Because I'm sure at the time, you did not feel like you were choosing that experience for yourself.
Right. And my invitation would be to go into a space of, instead of logically looking at it, instead of using our mind, which here is a tool for us to really manifest in the 3D. So many of us default to our mind, but our mind is truly meant to be used as a tool. So if we're defaulting to our mind, we can only make a forward decision based on backwards or like history learning. what we learned in history. So my invitation is to raise out of the analytical side of it and into the soul evolution aspect of it, and look at how that really benefited my soul's evolution. Again, something that could be triggering for those to hear, well, how could that have possibly benefited you? There's lots of ways that it has, and that's really beside the point. But my invitation is to look at the physical from an elevated space of intuition. Now, I haven't spiritually bypassed the healing. I've done much of the integration of what happened, and that is what has allowed me to see it from a more, an intuitive space. And that would be my first suggestion, is to see it from an intuitive space as opposed to only in a linear 3D example, because that's where we feel the powerlessness, the victimhood, is when we take the soul out of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that and touching into, you didn't bypass it. And I think there is this tendency when we're spiritual seekers to think, okay, well, I need to frame everything as a benefit for my soul and make it all like okay and my soul's evolution choice. But you specifically said you integrated that. You didn't bypass, you took the time to integrate that. Can you tell us how what was your process to be able to integrate that trauma that you experienced?
Mm-hmm. It was on all levels. It was the physical, it was the mental, and it was the spiritual. And so, and it happened over time, right? I wasn't even fully conscious I wasn't conscious of the healing every time, right? It wasn't like, oh, here I'm healing the trauma of sex work, right? I didn't necessarily know that, but there was always opportunity coming up for the healing. And I would say that there was therapy, there was coaching, all of that. But the moments that I really remember making the biggest strides was recognizing that I was deeply depressed and then going into search of how to remedy that naturally. And one of the quickest ways that got me out of the depression was medication. And then from that point was substituting the medication for a more holistic approach, right? What I ate, how I fed my body, what I consumed mentally, all of those things. And then it went more to the emotional side of it, where, I worked through the memories. I didn't just say, okay, well, that was meant to be. And, now I'm good enough that I can see it and forgive myself. I really worked through every memory. I didn't just clear it spiritually. I went into it, experienced it, and then I did the spiritual integration of it. So it went from everything from physical, what I ate, the supplements I took, to the emotional work, and now into the spirituality. And it's been an evolution. It's been 10 years. So.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, because that really gives a full, an understanding of the wholeness of integrating trauma and processing trauma. It is physical, and traumas, when they're not checked, end up manifesting as dis-ease in the physical form. So I love hearing how, your sharing of how you started where you started with from depression to medication, to coming out of medication, then to holistic practices, and really being able to release the layers that had built up around that so that you could be free and integrated. And that is a process. It's not a snap of the fingers and it's done. It's an integration process. So thank you for sharing about that. I think that's helpful for anybody, and all humans are working through some trauma at some level, even if it's just collectively, if we've done our personal work. So to have that understanding that it is a process and it is okay to experience layers of it, and to be able to find the resources to release, which could be different for everyone, but there's certainly certainly are holistic ways to go about it. So thank you for sharing that. Michelle, did you want to add anything about your own life and processes? I know you do EFT, ways that you, I guess this might be kind of in the realm of tips and tricks, but to help people harmonize their shadow side with and integrate it into the light.
Sure. Megan's shadow was also my shadow.
Yeah.
I wasn't, being her mom, then I really had to surrender to, it was a higher faith in trusting that she had her soul's path and purpose, and that she was following that, and that she was safe. The tips and tricks I use is definitely emotional freedom technique. Megan uses EFT regularly. We talk every day, and I was on the phone with her one morning saying, oh, I'm really struggling with this. She was like, well, Mom, I tap every day. I'm like, oh yeah, I should tap on this.
Mm-hmm.
But emotional freedom technique, in these times of changing, we are ascended, we are ascending. There's nothing that needs to happen outside of us in the physical world now. We're not waiting for anything. It's a matter of choice. We have been provided many, many, many energetic tools that shift us quickly. And EFT happens to be my favorite. As I work with it, and I've worked with it for almost 20 years now. It was an answer to a prayer. I started with hypnotherapy because hypnotherapy is fast. But as I worked with women and self-worth and self-confidence, I realized I wanted something faster. And EFT was presented to me. And so that's what I find is, we are programmed to fail and we are hardwired to succeed. And EFT is a powerful, powerful tool to move through and release the programming.
Wonderful. And I know you're masterful at that. I've done it with you before and it's been very helpful. Is there a place, do you have videos where people can like step through EFT, the process with you available?
Yes, I actually do on my YouTube channel, and we can share those links, YouTube and Vimeo. I absolutely do.
Great. What's the name of your YouTube channel? Just so people can go there if they're just listening.
The name of my YouTube channel is Set Free.
Set Free. Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, for people that are new and haven't heard of EFT, it's also called tapping, and that's just a great introduction. I know you're really wonderful at walking people through that. So I'll make sure I include the link to that too. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing about that. And so next, I'd like to step into the embodiment aspect. And you've both really been able to take, all of your life experiences and step into the embodiment of holding the frequency, holding space for yourselves in your own evolvement, and now for others too in your mystery school. So could you talk about that, about the process that it takes to embody your mystical power and purpose? And Michelle, I know you've been coaching for many, many years, so you've been doing this work for a really long time and helping others do it. But I'd love for people to hear a little bit more about your embodiment practices of how do you hold your spiritual energy?
That's great. I love that question. It's the first step is releasing the denser emotions. So definitely EFT is a part of my practice almost daily. Meditation, absolutely, for sure, is a part of that. And consistent inspiration, whether it's spiritual books or writing for myself. I have found that my inspiration and my intuition comes through my writing very easily, very easily. So it's really tapping into where serves you. But time is spent every single day. So for people who say, I don't have time to meditate or I don't meditate, I mean, that is so important, is to taking that time, however you may meditate. I love sitting in meditation for 30, 45 minutes, an hour. I love that. Megan? No, 5 minutes. And like, she's done. She's manifested, she's tapped into, she is connected to spirit immediately. So it's really knowing, taking time to explore what works for you, what works for you. But it's a daily practice. And it's releasing the separation between like, okay, this is my spiritual practice, and now I'm going to work. Now I'm working with clients. Now I'm going on social media. It's bringing the spiritual into all of it, into all of it. You know, it's like blessing this interview as we're going through it, right? Setting the intention and being grateful for the powerful effect that for all of our watchers prior, right? It's bringing that into every moment.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think it's the next step, as opposed to only consuming what you consider as, spiritual, and then actually doing it. That's the embodiment piece, is actually going and living it. For me, that looks like following my intuition all the time, even when it doesn't seem logical, even when it doesn't seem like it should be. Part of embodying all of this spiritual practice is then to take action on the intuition, regardless of what it looks like, and to practice it, like Michelle said, not to put a separation between, okay, this is my spiritual practice and now I'm going to go be a mom, or it's really letting it flood into all of those pieces, but without judgment about whether you're doing it well or right or not. A really funny example that I like to use is, I'm like, okay, I'm going to approach everything today. My intention is to approach it with love through the eyes of God, or through the eyes of Christ, usually is where I would go with that, like the love piece, the true acceptance of everything. And I'm sitting in my great, spiritual space in the morning, and my daughter comes in and she's like, I peed the bed. And I want to go, I am working on my Christ consciousness right now. Leave the room. And I'm like, oh yeah, she's included. I hear that you peed the bed. How can I support you? So it's realizing that we have a tendency to have an on and off switch, and allowing that switch to open up, and our spiritual experience floods through to our 3D experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you touched into the non-judgment aspect. And we do have this tendency to compartmentalize. All right, this is our spirituality practice, our meditation is over here. And now I got to go deal with this thing, or work, or, whatever it is, your daughter, your children. So yeah, that integration, that it's all spirit all the time when we bring our presence. And how can we respond with more presence for each situation, and respond to our children's needs just as fully and heart-centered as we would with our meditation practice. And I also love that you commented on your different ways of approaching your practice. And I think it is important for people to know, well, I'm also, like Michelle, I am a meditator. I can sit for hours in meditation. I just got back from a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat, and some of the meditations are 4.5 hours long, and I love that, but some people don't do that. Some people, that's not your style. So to be able to integrate your practice into a shorter period of meditation or walking meditation, or for some people it's creative, painting or expressing themselves in whatever way, and just to be able to bring that alignment. I do think sitting for a little while anyway is helpful for everyone, but it doesn't have to be hours. Could be very short, and you can still, and you're obviously connecting very deeply. You've trained yourself to be able to connect in, whatever way that is for you. You seem to have really direct access. So
yeah, I do an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, but it isn't all sitting meditation. There is quite a bit of conversation, which for some people, maybe that is considered meditation. I don't know, but I definitely call in and write or converse, or usually, there's images. And I think that is would be a form of meditation, but not necessarily sitting meditation. I do probably about 15 minutes of that. 15 minutes.
Well, and I think journaling, an automatic writing, that can be very deep, just as deep as sitting and visualizing or whatever, or not visualizing. Yeah, wonderful. These are great. I feel like what you're sharing is really helpful for everyone, just to get these different ideas of, oh, it doesn't have to look like XYZ. It can be lots of different ways, and there's so many ways to connect. I'd love to step into asking you about how the Sophia Mystery School came to be. And let's just start there. And then I have some more specific questions about that.
Cool. Well, Sophia Mystery School came about a year ago. A little more than a year ago. I had some guidance around opening a mystery school, and I just wasn't really sure what that looked like. And I knew it was the Sophia Mystery School. I felt very in alignment with the divine feminine and the Sophia, and activating the divine feminine in women and men, mostly women. I've worked with women. And I started doing a Sunday celebration. I did a Sunday celebration every Sunday morning that became a Sophia activation for over a year. And I really kind of thought, I was like, well, I guess the Sophia Mystery School is just going to be a free Sunday celebration. And then about 4 months ago, Megan and I were talking, and someone asked us, why don't you start the Sophia Mystery School? And it was just like, I go, Megan, what do you think about this? You and I doing this together? And I wasn't sure how Megan would feel. I really trust her intuition. And she's like, yeah, that feels good. That feels right. And it just flowed like that, and she said, we definitely want to start with a online show. And so we kind of, it flowed out. And I was like, oh, what do we call it? Practical magic. It's practical magic. And then we're looking over our past, her being a little girl and us always watching the movie Practical Magic, and me reading the holographic universe and crying, going, this is truth. But how do we make this practical? That was my thought. How do we make this practical? How do we apply this information now into our mundane life? And now it's just come to a point we get to do that. And we start looking at, over the years, we've taken it for granted because we start applying this and applying this and applying this. And pretty soon we realize we're living the magical lifestyle, and we've just sort of taken it for granted. And when we're looking at the curriculum that we have created for the Sophia Mystery School, we're like, oh yeah, we've been doing this for so long, and we've been doing that, and this is really what people are looking for. So we're really excited about it. It feels like what we were born for. And I say I was born almost 20 years ahead of Megan, but I really do feel like soulmates with her, that my presence and experience has activated her, and then she has in turn activated me, and we continue to do that. I mean, she is the golden triangle, and I am the spiral of the golden mean. We are creation together. And that was something we discovered a couple of years ago, and it just felt like this click, like, oh, together we bring this awakening.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that. And as you're speaking, you've got the spiral fossil shell behind you. It's so perfect. Yeah. So I could have you comment on that, Megan, but what I'd actually like to ask you, because you did this amazing series called Practical Magic, and I was fortunate to be a speaker on that. I loved the show. And one of the things that I loved about that is you asked each of the speakers for a tip or a trick on how to use their practical magic, or how to make, how do you bring the mystical into your daily life. And I didn't get to hear everybody. I heard some of the interviews. I didn't hear all of them, but I would love to hear from you, each of you. What was your favorite tip that was a takeaway from your show? What one thing was the most powerful that stood out from you from all of the speakers that shared?
Yeah, for me, there was a transmuting practice that I think it was Kimberly Mosca had mentioned. And it's something that I definitely do and hadn't considered it like one of the practices that I did. And then she went over that. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course that's a practice. And you can do it with anything. She had specifically talked about like the number that's in your bank account, not identifying with a low number in your bank account, but, realizing that there's like a heavy kind of dark energy around that and holding that ball of heavy dark energy and working with it from, I may not be explaining it exactly the way she did, but this is my interpretation of it. But really then transmuting that dark energy until it's light energy, and then allowing it to go back into, because there really is no getting rid of something, right? Even if you release it, there's the lease, which means it's coming back. So instead of fighting the heaviness around it, we transmute the energy into light, which is going to be more beneficial, more enjoyable for our experience. So that was my favorite, was transmuting. It could be any dark, heavy energy, right? Whether it's around an ex-husband, that's what I do a lot of it around, or your business, or, wherever that heaviness is, transmuting it to light and then allowing it to go back into that particular experience.
I love that. That's alchemy. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the transmutation, changing from one form to the other and making it beneficial in your life. Thank you for sharing that. I love
And
that.
one last thing that goes back to like the integrating the shadow, right? Like we don't want to get rid of that energy. You can't get rid of it, right? It's not about dismissing it. When you dismiss it, you're resisting it. When you're resisting it, it's going to persist. So it truly is, the alchemy.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the purpose of, my topic of harmonizing light and shadow, because we don't just get to brush the shadow under the rug. It will keep coming back out. It'll keep popping out to find us until we face it and work with it and integrate it and really accept it and stop resisting. Because like you said, what you resist persists. So it's an opportunity and this is really what I want everyone to understand. It's not a bad thing to have your shadow side pop up. It's an opportunity to integrate more, to hold more light, to transmute and work through, versus pushing away and trying to hide or pretending that it doesn't exist. So thank you. I think that's, another technique that, the transmutation that we can work through and with. Michelle, do you have one?
Sure. And I would like to add to that, with coming into the 3D, living on Earth and living in polarity, we came here for that. We came here for that. There would be no reason to incarnate in the physical if we didn't want to experience polarities. And so, yeah, the shadow it's remembering, our ascension is remembering that we are sovereign over the shadow. The shadow is always going to be there. And I know a lot of spiritual seekers are waiting for something to happen in our 3D world in order to ascend. Ascension is now. It's now. And it is a daily choice to either to alchemize the shadow and choose the light, or fall into the shadow. And I think a lot of spiritual people right now are making the mistake of waiting for the time to ascend. And so polarity is always going to be here at some level, and we always get to make the choice to choose our sovereignty and alchemize what we're being presented with instead of waiting for it to change, waiting for some big news to be announced that gives us that all of the shadow is removed. We came here for the experience of both. So I hope that helps. I felt inspired to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. It's always now in every moment, every moment. And I mean, waiting is one thing, but that's looking for the outside world to change in order for the inside world to change. And that's the opposite of how it actually works. We've got to change from the inside to see the outside reflect the change.
Exactly, exactly. My favorite tip, I think it was Bonnie that shared this tip, and it's having a board meeting. She would have a board meeting every day before her day, and her board was her spirit guide team. And I love this. It wasn't the first time I heard it, but I love it because tend to be a very lone wolf person. And two, I'm a doer, do. And what she shared having her board meeting, and she basically told, she set her intentions. Here's what I want to experience today. Here's what I want to experience today. And she gave it to her board to make sure that that's what she experienced. So she wasn't hanging on to it. She wasn't like trying to make something happen. She handed it over to her board, which is exactly handing it over to infinite intelligence or spirit, however you want to refer to spirit. And so she intentionally lived every day in her darkest moments while she was living out of her car, got a job for the lowest paying pay that she got a low paying job, and she wasn't happy with it. And she decided to tell her board what she wanted. And she went in and accepted where she was instead of resisting where she was, and was able to transform her experience from that space by giving it over to the board.
I love that. Yeah. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking of like Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, talks about, bringing, I think that's the book, right? Where the divine minds of the past
Yes.
together and meeting with them and learning in a mastermind, an imaginal mastermind. And also Abraham Hicks speaks of just give it up, like write your list of to-dos and choose the one or two that you're going to do that day and give the rest away to the divine. And then it's like allowing the magic, let the magic align for you. And that doesn't mean don't take action. Certainly take action when you're presented with an opportunity, but we don't have to do it all. And I think it gets us out of our thinking, I'm the only one, like you said, the lone wolf, I got to do it all. And if I don't do it, I don't have any help. So just realizing we do have a team, we do have support.
Yes, absolutely. And that is
the mindset.
That's the way to do it in flow and ease. And that is the divine feminine way. And that is the way of ascension. That is the way to live in the golden age.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So Megan, in your bio write-up, you mentioned timeline shifting. And I'm of the belief that we can sort of bend time. If you're familiar with human design, I'm a manifesting generator, and Karen Curry Parker has a new version, like a quantum version of human design, where she's calling the manifesting generators, previously known as manifesting generators, time benders, which I absolutely love. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what does that mean, timeline shifting, and is that part of your mystery school teachings, and like unpack that concept for us a little bit.
Yeah, so many people have mentioned human design to me. I really get to look into that because I still haven't. I still haven't. They're like, oh, that's exactly, I'll be tuning into them. They're like, oh, that's exactly what I am. I'm a generator or I'm a manifestor. I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means in the terms of human design. So yeah, I get to explore that more. So timeline shifting is definitely something that we go over in the Sophia Mystery School. It's part of what I consider makes my life extremely magical is knowing one, that it exists, knowing two, that I'm doing it, and then three, actually how to do it consciously, purposefully, right? That's the next level actually in Ascension, is beyond your self-awareness, actually being able to consciously create these kind of, superhuman or metaphysical type of experiences. And so timeline shifting, in short, I mean, it is something we go over in the Sophia Mystery School because it's extensive. But in short, in our personal grid, we have endless timelines, truly an infinite amount of what we could experience in one single lifetime. And we have an ideal timeline. It does come through to me as called the destiny timeline. I don't always refer to it as destiny timeline because it can be confusing that, people will think no matter what, if it's my destiny, I will end there, but that's actually not true. We still have to choose our destiny. And so as I'm looking at people's timelines, there's an infinite amount of timelines they can choose. The one that is highlighted is the one that they're on. And then the next highlighted one is their ideal. Most people are not on their ideal timeline. Part of the soul's evolution is to choose that timeline. And so I walk people through a process of being in the timeline that they are now, knowing the timeline that is for their highest good, really the reason their soul came here, and then making micro realignment. So micro readjustments in your frequency to then align with that original or ideal timeline.
Ooh, that's exciting. I love that. And so, without, like giving too much away, can you share a little bit of what does it mean to make a micro adjustment, or what does that look like in application?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm cool with giving away as much as possible. I just know that, I'm trying to figure like what is going to be the most beneficial for people to know, because it's a very holistic, right? You can't really just pull out one piece of it and then shift a timeline. There's moving pieces, right? But a micro adjustment could look like a micro adjustment in a practical sense could look like a new morning routine, right? So that morning routine is connecting you to source more regularly. So for someone who maybe doesn't do a morning routine or doesn't have any sort of time set aside for connection to source and spirit, creating a morning routine where you are 60 minutes in the flow of source is going to drastically shift your frequency. And then when that frequency is shifted, you have moved a particular octave, probably not an entire octave, but a portion of an octave that gets you that much closer to the timeline that you're desiring. And what these micro adjustments are for each person, it's very individual, because there could be someone who already has a great connection with source, and yet they aren't so great with the human action piece, which then brings your manifestations into the physical. So for them, they would work on a more practical and physical application of doing something. Most people, that's not really the case, but sometimes it is. And so theirs may look like actually accomplishing something that they've been inspired about, and then that increases their frequency. The real special thing is when you've got multiple things going on, multiple micro alignments or micro readjustments happening at one time. That's when you wake up the next day in a very different experience. That's how you go from, previously in your business, maybe monetizing $5,000 a month to now being in a multiple six-figure. It seems like all of a sudden, yet micro adjustments happened in order for that to take place. And the cool part is when you do it consciously and not just like in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. That's exactly, I feel like that's the kind of understanding that makes it all mesh, because a lot of people, when they think about, Ascension and the practice of that, it's all like, well, it must be all energetic, right? But you're talking about making actual real life changes in your behaviors, in your actions, in your business, in things like that, in your rituals, to make that frequency adjustment. And so it is more comprehensive in that, yes, there is the mental aspect of it, the frequency and the energetic aspect, but there are things you do to get there as well. And that is very unique to the individual. So thank you for clarifying that. That was very interesting. So I would love to, Michelle, I'd love to ask you, maybe because your mystery school is this big body of work, do you have a favorite practice or technique or something that you could share about with the viewers that would give them an idea of kind of what's your expertise within the teaching?
Sure. Gosh, my expertise, well, Megan and I intermesh. I love the timeline hopping as well, around shifting, understanding that our denser emotions, right? We talk about the EFT, our denser emotions keep us anchored in a timeline. And so as you release and make those, part of the micro alignment may be releasing some of the denser emotions and activating your innate wiring of worthiness. Because you can, if you don't feel worthy of a timeline, right? If you don't feel worthy of a timeline, then you're not going to activate or access the frequencies to move you there. So it's a matter of really living life as ceremony and understanding that we are, that's what I really like to focus on, is helping our students understand that we are in a hologram. We're in a hologram, and anything we see at any moment is a creation of our own, And so judging your creation, right, and resisting it and saying, no, this is wrong, keeps you anchored there. The first time, like, I intentionally did a timeline hop, this is talking about the shadow side, is that there is a shadow side, and there is, there's mind control happening, and there's different black ops, different things happening that people do suffer from. And I was experiencing that. I was experiencing being psychically attacked. I was experiencing my electronics in my house going off suddenly, and black helicopters flying over my residence regularly. And that's scary stuff, right? It's like, oh my gosh. And I remembered, if this timeline exists, there's also the timeline in which that is not happening exists. And that was my first intentional timeline hop, is to hop out of that timeline under which I had been seen as kind of like a light worker, right? Like, oh, there's this light worker that is working towards this ascension piece. And there was, the intent to scare me into not fulfilling my mission. And so remembering that this is a hologram and we get to switch out of that anytime, right? And that was my first experience. And I was motivated by fear. I was definitely motivated by fear, because, I did a bunch of research on it, and I was like, man, people are getting stuck in this. And that is not my experience. I am the power and the presence of the divine, and I choose a new timeline. I choose a timeline in which that's not happening. So my overall favorite part of teaching is remembering that we are sovereign, absolutely sovereign in every moment. And, you know, Megan teaches the micro alignments. And I'm always like, okay, Megan, what's my micro alignment, right? She's really good about that. And so it's bringing it together and remembering in every moment, we are not victim to any experience, no matter how big the experience seems.
Yeah, you know, we're always doing two things simultaneously, which is healing or integrating, and then up leveling or activating. And you really help with the clearing aspect, you know, the integration piece, that shadow piece where people are stuck in the emotion of it. And then they go with up level, right? It's like a very ping pong. I mean, just like the bonus sessions we did, you know, I was tuning into what their frequency is that they get to expand into for 2021. And then you helped them clear any limiting beliefs that would keep them from that particular expansion into the new frequency. So they tend to ping pong off each other like so perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, that was powerful. I really love the empowerment piece around being able to choose our reality. And even, you know, especially for people right now who are sort of overwhelmed and stuck in the drama of quarantine, of, you know, all of the outpicturing of the pandemic era. That there actually is a choice in the experience. And there are certainly many levels of participation and stepping away and out of that drama. And I'm sure the conversation could be triggering, just like all of this, but the empowerment piece is to realize we are the creator, we are sovereign, and we get to choose our experience. And it was just, both of you had beautiful demonstrations of how that is so, for everything that we experience, and practical applications of how to integrate it into your life. So absolutely love this conversation. Time has flown by. And I want to make sure that we talk about your free gift before we end. So you're offering a free gift called Simple Ways to Increase Your Frequency for Ascension. Would you share what that is?
Yeah, so there's 10 simple ways that we use on a daily basis. It you know, covers mind, body, and soul that allow us to not only increase our vibration, but then maintain it. These are the 10 most simple ways, right? There's lots of things to do, but we wanted to make it quick enough that someone could just download it and read it on their phone and start one by one. And with the 10 simple steps, we also included a checklist. So you can print that off and then make sure that you've done each of the 10 things for the entire week. My recommendation is to commit to doing this for at least 21 days and see what shifts for you. Like, so much will change. You will only be in a new frequency, but you'll be maintaining the frequency, which is really what's most important. We can all like bounce to a high vibration, but what really keeps us manifesting and moving forward is being able to maintain whatever up level has recently occurred. So these are the 10 simple ways that to increase your frequency for ascension, which is what we're all doing. Most of us are choosing to do right now. So like Michelle said, ascension is upon us. It's a daily choice. And I know that these tips are beneficial in that process. Yeah.
Thank you. I love how you make everything practical and applicable to daily life, you know, because it's not just these grandiose concepts. It's like, and here's what you do on a daily basis to make it work, to make it happen. So thank you for that. Would either of you like to share any final thoughts? Is there anything you wanted to share that I didn't work into the conversation? We have a couple minutes left, so I'd love to let you just share whatever that is, if you have anything left.
Go ahead.
I was just going to share, you know, in the pandemic era, like you said, that some of this can be really triggering, but this pandemic era was created for us to recognize false freedoms.
Mm.
And when those false freedoms are being taken away, we think our freedoms are being taken away, but we are being activated for true sovereignty and true freedom. And, I like to use the example of Nelson Mandela. He was imprisoned for decades and never gave up his sovereignty. And so our back is up against the wall as humanity, and we're being forced to make a choice. And the choice is, this experience is making us activate our superhumanness and awaken to our spiritual selves. So if anyone's being triggered at this time, allow it to trigger you into your power.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I would add to that is aside from it being created for us, we created it to be able to experience our free choice. And you see it all over. There's people who are living their damn life happy, living in magic. And then there's other people who are not. And it's a perfect description of how we can choose the experience that we want amidst a pandemic, amidst politics. There's always a choice. And so our invitation is that even as we're integrating the shadow, even as we're seeing so many paradigms crumble, we can still be in the magic as the new is being created, again, by us.
Absolutely. Love that. Thank you both for your generosity and all of your sharing. I think that this conversation will be helpful to so many people. Certainly I learned a lot from it, and I appreciate you both so much and everything that you bring to the world of Ascension and all that you're doing in the world. So thank you so much for being a part of this and for all that you do.
Thank you, Shayla. We appreciate all your work and your support. Thank you for doing you.
My pleasure. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure and let us know what you learned, what you got, and what wisdom unfolded for you after listening to this conversation. Grab the free gift, and we'll see you next time. And remember, we are all in this together, ascending together, creating our reality together. And namaste.